Developmental stages of love. As you noticed, the area that you cannot read are the same as the areas that you can read, okay? At any given time, sensual, sexual, emotional, mental, moral, societal, and universal love are present in the marriage at any given time. But as the relationship evolves and as we evolve, they become, they go on a hierarchical process, and this is related to the question that was earlier asked. At the beginning of marital relationship, the sensual is very profound and sexual, okay? That's at the beginning. Then gradually, we become more aware of our emotional and add the emotional dimension and mental dimension. But as we go further, we would discover that the issue of sexuality becomes less important as we become older and other issues come and pregnancies happens and children come to this world and we don't have any sleep and all of those things. You know, sexuality then goes by the wayside, okay? Understandably, because now priorities in life begin to change. And then other dimensions, moral and social aspect begin to take prominence. We create families. We become nucleus of a community. We begin to open our homes. We have people coming. Our children go to school. We have a school community of people. So our domain of marital love therefore has both individual, personal dimensions, which are sensual, sexual, psychological, and have also social dimensions, which are the areas of mental, moral, and social. All of them involve, and universal, of course, the spiritual dimension of love. So when you think of it, realize that at all times, all of these exist, but the prominence of some of them become less. At the beginning of the marriage, we are not all that preoccupied with social and universal aspect of love because we are so preoccupied with our own establishing intimate relationships and so forth. When we get older, then the universal and social aspects take prominence and issues of sexuality and so forth go in the background. However, in the age that we live and with the Viagra and so forth, the companies are trying to make sure that you never move beyond the first and second phase. You see, we live in a society that is focused and adamant to keep us at those two levels and not move beyond that, you see. And that is, of course, the characteristic of a materialistic civilization. And we are engaged into creating a spiritual civilization.
Our table didn't have a comment, so we have a question. When one feels that they're at the beginning stages of spiritual growth and just beginning to acquire spiritual discipline, does that make one not ready for marriage? So basically the question kind of roots in how can we know if we're ready for marriage?
Yes. Well, we will talk about that probably tomorrow, but just mention one aspect of it here. That's why you have to have the consent of the parents as well. So we will talk hopefully tomorrow about how do you know you are ready to get married, but also as parents, how do you know that your children are ready to get married? Because many times I have noticed parents give consent which are problematic, to put it nicely.
Thank you. First, a comment regarding something you mentioned, and you said we have to be free, we have to be in control. An idea was shared at our table as the example that Abdul-Baha gives about our higher nature, our spiritual nature versus our lower nature, where our higher nature is the horseman and our lower nature be the horse. So you are free as the horseman when you are in control of the animal nature, where the horseman controls anywhere he wants to go by controlling the horse. But you are not free when you are not a good horseman, and it's the horse that is deciding where it goes. So that was a good example that was shared at our table. Regarding our question was, many people have a hard time accepting receiving love in that they feel guilty or it being selfish. We were wondering what is the root cause of that and what can we do to remedy that? Thank you.
Thank you for that reminder of analogy that Abdul-Baha gave, which is very apt and appropriate. As far as the question, what was exactly the question? When are we ready, you said? To receive love. The question of receiving love is very much related to your self-image. Is related to how you perceive yourself. Put it differently, whether you see yourself as lovable. Many people have very conflicted relationship with themselves, with their bodies, with their own self-identity, and usually they feel that they don't deserve to be loved, or that they are not lovable, period. That's one problem. The other one is that people who have been disappointed in love relationships, namely that they have been rejected, and they have experienced rejections, then they are afraid to give love, because if you give love, the other person may love you back and later would withdraw it. And you again would be rejected. So it's better not to be loved to begin with, so you don't go through that painful process again and again and again. So they usually have deep psychological roots of related to either conflicted self-love or conflicted previous interpersonal love. In either of them, you can do a lot yourselves to change the situation. And the fundamental thing, again, is for you to be able to be objective about yourself. Objective meaning to be able to stand out and look at yourself from the perspective of your good friends and others. If you find that everybody avoids you, you're in deep trouble. Okay? But if you find that people appreciate you, they like you, they want to establish a relationship with you, it means that you have good qualities. That it means that you don't see them, but others see them. And therefore, you need to begin to remove those veils that are in front of you about yourself. And ultimately, of course, you have to remember that you are created by God. And God doesn't goof. Okay? And He created you. He created you who you are. He said, I love thy creation, therefore I created you. I created thee. So you are brought to this world for a purpose, and you have been given qualities and capacities that have made you who you are. And if God loves you, you don't have any right not to love yourself, and not to appreciate yourself, and not to take care of yourself, and not to allow yourself to be loved by others. Okay? So we have to remember that spiritual dimension of who we are. We are not just nobodies. We are the ones that God has created. And there is a purpose in this creation. And there is a reason we are here. And all the reasons are there within us in a state of potentiality. And now we have to actualize them. We have to bring them out. We have to blossom. And this process of blossoming, we shouldn't be shy about it. Blossom your qualities, your capacities. You have so much of it. You just have to allow yourself to discover them and let them to evolve and grow.
Our comment was that now it's become obvious that marriage is a beginning of a process as an institution. It's a building process, which not just finally
That's right.
we're married. And the question is, how can we make investigation of character such that we enter the marriage with the appropriate attitude so that it is progressive and not conclusive?
Okay. Now, remind me to address this issue again this afternoon, which I think is the first thing that we are going to discuss, about marriage being the beginning of the process. I always say marriage is the first child of the couple. Okay? When you get married, you give birth immediately to a child. And your child is your new marriage. And if you don't take care of it, and if you think that this newly born child is going to take care of you, you're in bad shape. If you think your marriage is going to take care of you, rather than you taking care of your marriage, then you're in trouble, okay? So think of your marriage as your first child and how you're going to help this first child to grow. Think of it. Because most marriages that go sour in the early stages is because the couple thought that by getting married, everything would be okay. Marriage is going to take care of them. Not realizing that by getting married, you are going to have a child. Very weak, very shaky, little baby who is going to cry and who is going to do all kinds of funny things. And you have to take care of this child and help it to grow. Okay? So keep that in mind. We will talk about it again.
Our group wants to know a specific question. We have no comments but specific question. How do we as Baha'is address same-sex marriage? Should we as Baha'is see same-sex marriage as being a healthy relationship, since the concept of sexuality is an integral part of a healthy relationship? How do we deal with the taboo of this situation in the Baha'i community as well in the public setting? Thank you.
Well, we briefly talk about this and then continue to talk about the dynamics of development of love in marriage. The whole issue of, there are two issues to keep in mind with respect to this question on homosexuality and homosexual marriages. One is that we as Baha'is should understand that we live at a time in which not all Baha'i teachings are either understood and accepted or can be practiced fully. That's the reason that in the history of the faith, we see that implementation of Baha'i laws have been gradual. Gradual depending on the level of readiness of society to deal with various issues. Therefore, we shouldn't be surprised that we see a variance between the Baha'i principles and the prevalent concepts and ideas in our societies. As I said earlier, we Baha'is are abnormal bunch of people. And in the context of the contemporary society, there are many things about us that is abnormal. One of them is with respect to issue of homosexuality. You know, when I was a psychiatrist, I started my training as a psychiatrist, homosexuality actually was included as a disease. Okay? I remember we received training on how to deal with homosexuality and how to treat homosexual people and so forth. 30 years later, not only homosexuality was taken out of a process, but was accepted as a social process. Now is being considered as actually a healthy expression of human sexuality based on the concept of freedom of choice. These are changes that we see how a society, when it changes, the manner in which it looks at all kinds of issues, including issue of health and illness, changes, okay? This is very important to know. Now, my personal view is that if we look at the history of humanity, we discover a very interesting phenomenon. Namely, we discover that whenever a civilization is on the decline, the prevailing concepts in the society become increasingly anti-life. In other words, people engage in activities that are not conducive to creation and protection of life. And therefore, we see a number of things coincide with each other. With respect to marriage and family, we see less people want to get married. Though less number of people who get married want to have children. Those who want to have children have less and less number of children. And we also see that many people want to replace normal forms of marriages with other types of marriages, including homosexual relationships or homosexual marriages. Now, marriage, in the history of humanity, we see every time that a civilization has been declined, the rate of homosexuality has gone up. Okay, every time. Because it is a character or expression of what is happening in the society as a whole, and the dilemmas and challenges that are happening. Concomitant with these issues, we see increasing the rate of conflict, increase in the rate of violence, increase in the rate of activities that are not productive of life or preserving of life, including drug addictions and other such activities. Okay? So it is my view that we live at a time in human history which certain activities are becoming accepted as normal, while when a new civilization emerges with higher standards and different types of looking at life and dynamics of life, that those same activities would be considered as abnormal. In my view, what is happening is that the materialistic civilization that we live in right now is giving birth to all kinds of issues that considers normal, that have been considered abnormal in the past, or may be considered abnormal in the future. And I think that homosexuality, we will find that is fundamentally of that category, except that I have mentioned that from a genetic perspective, there are very, very, very small number of individuals who have genetic anomalies which confuses the gender identity of those people. And that's understandable, and that's always you see those anomalous processes in. But when an issue becomes a public, a social issue, that's a different kind of a situation. And here we are dealing with that aspect. That's my personal view, okay? And when we study the writings of the Baha'i faith, in which clearly the issue of homosexuality is considered not as a normal human sexual identity, you know, we have to pause and reflect what is happening, okay? And not to get, on the one hand, doubtful about the teachings of the faith, and on the other hand, not to get overly confident that because famous people and thought, you know, so-called people who call themselves scientists and this and that, begin to espouse an idea, it means that necessarily what they say is correct or is going to stand the test of time, okay? This is my approach and understanding to it. We want to talk about developmental stages of marriage, and which, of course, involves the developmental stages of love. And I tried to create a PowerPoint for it, but I got bogged down with technical issues and couldn't do it. So you have to, you know, go along with my creative processes here. Now, before we do that, there is a quotation that I want to put up there. Here it is. Baha'i marriage is union and cordial affection between the two parties. They must, however, exercise the utmost care and become acquainted with each other's character. This eternal bond should be made secure by a firm covenant, and the intention should be to foster harmony, fellowship, and unity. Now, as you noticed, this quote is like a sandwich. Start with unity, bond up, and ends with unity down, union and unity. And in between, there are a number of issues, okay? So think of Baha'i marriage as a sandwich. The two sides are unity. In the middle is that you have to, first of all, exercise the utmost care to become acquainted with each other. You have to get to know each other. You have to share your thoughts with each other. You have to share your feelings with each other. You have to create conditions in which you are physically lovable so that you can be close to each other. Refinement of character, body that I mentioned earlier, physical refinement. All of these are necessary in order for you to get close to each other, to know each other's character, because without knowing each other's character, you wouldn't know how to use each other's unique qualities and capacities to bring about unity. Another element that is added to this sandwich of marriage is that this eternal bond, you know, it is a bond that once you establish a relationship, you are together for a long time meaning forever. That's a relatively long time, you know. You think of it. You're stuck with each other forever, to put it nicely. And therefore, it is essential that this eternal bond be secured by a firm covenant. Now, what is covenant? Covenant here not only refers to the notion of legal and other types of covenant, but the covenant reflects your will, the use of your power of will. You remember earlier we talked about the 3 powers of human soul: knowledge, love, and will. In this quotation, all 3 of these issues are addressed. When Abdul-Baha says that we have to exercise utmost care to become acquainted with each other's character, he's talking about our knowledge of each other. When he's talking about union, and bond, he's talking about the emotional love dimension of the power of human soul. And when he talks about the covenant, he's talking about the way we use our will, because covenant is related to the manner in which human beings exercise their will. And the whole idea is, the final intention is, that we create harmony, fellowship, and unity. So you see how the Baha'i marriage begins with the issue of creating a union, a state of unity, and the objective is to have an eternal bond of unity. So unity becomes the central theme of Baha'i marriage. Why? Because unity is the primary law of existence. If you take away unity, everything breaks down. You take unity out of the marriage, not only happiness goes away, not only joy goes away, not only peace of mind goes away, eventually the whole marriage goes away. Okay? Unity is the essential element, essential objective. So most people do not think about marriage along these lines. We can end with that. We can cover it now. Those people don't think about marriage in these things. They think about marriage as 2 people who somehow fall in love, and they connect to each other through a religious ceremony, through a legal contract, and they are together. And then when they fall out of love, which people do all the time, fall in and fall out, then anytime you fall in, the likelihood is that you're going to fall out. Okay? When you do that, and then this happens, and then they go their ways. That's the way most people think of marriage. And that is not really what marriage is all about. Marriage is about union. I'm going to be destroy things here, but I don't think you will see down there, so we go. Think of marriage in this way. This is the wife, this is the husband, and this is the marriage. Okay? When you are engaged in act of union or unity, unity means coming together of two diverse entities to create a third entity. So, two diverse entities, wife and husband, come together to create a third entity, which is their marriage. And as I said, marriage is the first child of the couple. Now they have given birth to a little, nice, plump marriage. Okay? And they have to take care of this marriage. If they don't, marriage dies, gets sick and dies. So, in this context, we have to see how marriage evolves and develops. A marriage usually has 3 stages of development. The first stage of development we call the primary union phase. Primary union phase. Primary union. Primary meaning primitive. Earlier stages. Primary union phase. Another name of this phase is the romantic phase. Another name is the blind love phase. Okay? Blind love. This phase of marriage is really romantic, exciting. The couple fall in love with each other. How they fall in love with each other? Usually fall in love on the basis of 2 processes. First, we fall in love because of attraction to the other person. As I said earlier, attraction is one of the main aspects of love. And because we are all lovers, we all have the capacity and the need to love and be loved, we easily and readily get attracted to those that we find attractive. So we look at somebody, we like the shape of their nose or toes or ears or God knows, okay, what we find in the other person attractive. But we suddenly say, this is the person. I love this person. She is my ideal, or he is my ideal, okay? And the other thing that happens is that not only we have this issue of attraction, we also have needs. We human beings have needs. We have the need for somebody to tell us we are the greatest person in this world. We need somebody to tell us we are the most beautiful or most handsome, the most caring, the most understanding, the most this, the most that. We need somebody to come and tell us, I will take care of you always. I will be protecting you. I will serve you. Doesn't matter what your needs are. If it happens that you come across somebody that you are attracted to them, to some of their qualities, physical or otherwise, and you are attracted also to them because they gratify some of your fundamental needs. Combination of those two things result in falling in love. That's what happens. And when we fall in love, we go blind. We go dumb, we go blind, we become childish, we begin to talk to each other baby talks, we start giving each other all kind of little nice names, we do all kind of suddenly games, and we constantly and completely become preoccupied with the other person. And we have to change the tape in 5 minutes. In the middle of falling in love, we have to change it. All right. Vic, you are really. Yes. So, we fall in love in that way. And what happens in this phase is that we always have an ideal of a person as a mate in our mind. This ideal person suddenly becomes personified in this person. And we therefore see in this person whatever we like to see. And we love in this person, whatever we see. And that's why it's so powerful of a process. And we really do not distinguish between reality and imagination. Because we see certain things in the other person that are based on reality, but we also project many things on that person that have no relationship with reality. Because we are in this phase blind. We are blinded by the force of our emotional attraction and the process of gratification of some of our fundamental needs. If we were going to depict this primary union romantic blind love in the context that we did, it would be like this. Okay? This thing is relationship, and these two things are husband and wife, okay? So what happens here is that the relationship takes over the lives of the two individuals. That's the reason that when they are together, and when they are aware from each other at work, they are sending texts, and they are writing poems, and they are daydreaming, and they are doing all kinds of things, that still they are together. Because this is that phase. It's an exciting phase. Everyone wishes that it would last forever, but it doesn't happen, because soon we would arrive at the next phase of the relationship. But before we go to the next phase, we have to go to the parents and ask for permission. And you go to the parents 19-year-old, apple of your eye, comes to you and said, Mommy, Daddy, I am in love. And tears coming down if they are girls, and smiles on their faces of their boys. God knows what happens. I'm sorry to being sexually, but discriminating in this way. But you say, oh, you're getting married. Yeah, I want to get married. This is the, my mate forever and so forth, and never, nobody's like, who is this person? Well, his name is John. What's his last name? I don't know. Okay, all right. What does he do? Well, he is in transition, meaning he doesn't have a job. All right, that's very nice. What about his parents? Oh, he has been separated from his parents. He doesn't deal with them, But he may be able to get their agreement. But have you met them? No, we haven't met them. All right, that's right. What do you know about his background? Nothing. But we understand that he has been in a jail and this and that. He said, well, yeah, you don't understand. We are in love, and love, the force of love, we are going to change everything. So what happens is that in the context of love, you lose your capacity to reason. As you read in the first valley or second valley of 7 valleys. If you go and read it in the 7 valleys, you will see Baha'u'llah says that in this valley, the force of reason goes away. And because marriage is supposed to be a covenant that is ever abiding and conducive to union and unity, then Baha'u'llah said, seek the advice of those individuals who know you and love you and are hopefully objective, who can stand back and look and say yes or no. Because if they don't fulfill that responsibility, and if you get married, then soon thereafter, all 6 people would be unhappy. The husband and wife and the parents of each of them, okay? And I have seen this over and over and over. But then parents say, but how can I say to my beloved little one that he's in love, or she is in love, that no? How can I say no? Well, it's very easy, no, okay? It's very easy. And it's a very good thing, because if you say no for good reasons, if your child indeed is a mature person, mature enough to get married, should be mature. If that person is mature enough, that person would have the capacity to look at what you are saying, the reasons that you are giving. If you are not sure about giving the permission, you say, well, I have to think about it. And if you're 19-year-old or 20-year-old or 45-year-old suddenly have a temper tantrum that you say no, or you say, I have to think about it, then it's obvious that they are not mature enough to get into this relationship, and they are not reasonable enough. So you would have all kind of clues whether indeed these 2 individuals who have fallen in love are ready to establish a union and go through the stormy process of a life together. Because marriage life is like going on an ocean. You are going to encounter storms, and you better be ready to face the storms that come in the marriage life. In the journey of marriage, you're going to encounter many unexpected storms. So actually, if your children are capable to wait, to listen to you, to see what are the reasons that you're offering. These are all very good signs. If on the other hand, they have temper tantrum, they get upset, they get depressed, they threaten that they're going to kill themselves, this is the last possible person that they can find in life, and this and that, then you're alarmed because you know that your child is not ready to get married, and the relationship that cannot wait and cannot face a little bit of a problem later is not going to face much more difficult problems and challenges that are going to come their way. So keep these in mind, because this is very important for young people to know. When you are planning to get married and you find somebody and you go to your parents, do not expect them to agree with you. Expect them to be realistic and objective and prayerful in their decisions. Expect them to take it seriously. Expect them to ask you questions. Expect them to put you to tests to see. Then you know that they are taking the process serious. And you know now that once you have gone to the whirlwind of being in love, you're going to be blind to everything. So beforehand, prepare yourself and say, I would know my parents would take this seriously or not if they really investigate my choice and not readily accept it. Readily accepting the choice of your children, choice of their spouse, is not a sign of love. It's a sign of not caring enough to make sure that it is going the right direction. So this is something important for young people to know and for parents to know. Because I have seen so many parents that later say, but we really didn't agree, but we gave the permission. Why? Why? What do you have against your children? to give them permission, you know, like a child says, can I jump in the ocean without having any safety precautions? And say, yeah, I love you, go and jump. And they jump and they drown. And we should be very careful in this process. So, the first phase of marriage, the primary union phase, lasts, depending on the type of relationship that people have, very short or relatively long. Not very long. Okay. Very short or relatively long. Those people who have had very intimate relationships with each other prior to marriage, usually they get married at the end of their romantic phase. Actually, they get married at the end of romantic phase because they realize intuitively that something is happening, changing, and they are so frightened to lose the relationship, and they just said, we better get married. And as soon as they get married, they enter the second phase, and I would describe the second phase for you. So it is very important to know what the course of a marriage is. The second phase is called, we call it the phase of differentiation. Differentiation. Or individuation. This is the phase in which the couple suddenly wake up. Wake up and they realize that the person that was perfect is not perfect. They begin to see in each other all kinds of deficiencies and habits and behavior that they didn't know before, or they didn't consider important before. They didn't know before is related to the fact that when couples are dating with each other, or in the first phase, we all wrap ourselves in nice packages. We are wrapped very nicely, very beautifully. There is a bow on it, and the cover is nice, and nice package. We sit with each other and talk for hours and hours and hours, and we listen to each other, we take care of each other, we are polite to each other, we are kind to each other. We always put our best to the front. And then we get married, and the primary union phase, the romantic phase ends, and package opens, and suddenly a surprise comes out. Surprise! And the surprise is that the man doesn't want to talk anymore. He's tired, he comes home, he wants to read his papers. At night, he snores. He brushes his mouth indifferently. He chews his food with a lot of noise. We have all kind of habits we have, all kind of things begin to become to the forefront. And the couple begin to see all kind of faults in each other. In the first phase, everything that we see in each other we love. Or no, we shouldn't say that. In the first phase, we see in each other what we like to see. In the second phase, we don't like anything that we see in each other. So in the second phase, we begin to go something like this. Here we are, this husband and wife, and this emaciated marriage. Okay? Very emaciated, very sickly marriage. And the couple become busy with their own lives, with their jobs. Usually nowadays, everybody has a job. With the children, which either is primarily responsibility of wife or little bit responsibility of husband and primarily responsibility of wife. With our respective friends and activities, and we begin to grow apart. And this growing apart of the second phase is mixed with the remembering of the romantic phase and how nice it was. And it is the phase that is most dangerous because many people begin to establish new romances, either in their minds or actually in their behavior. And when that happens, the marriage then is in a very desperate situation. Majority of people that I have seen over the years that their marriages broke up in this phase. And it broke up in this phase because they didn't know that every marriage of necessity goes through this phase. If the first phase is a childhood phase of marriage, this phase is the adolescent phase of marriage. In this phase, emotions are very high. There is a lot of fighting, a lot of arguments, a lot of breaking up and coming back together, a lot of variations and changes in the relationship. This is the process. It's the second phase of the marriage. And the most important thing to remember about second phase of marriage is to be patient. Baha'u'llah says, God loves those who are patient. Okay? And I tell you, in the second phase of marriage, you need enormous level of patience with each other and with yourself. And if you do that, eventually you would move to the third phase, which is a very interesting and exciting phase. But unfortunately, most marriages don't move beyond the second phase. Either separation happens or people get stuck in this phase. And they go for years and years and years having this kind of a volatile back and forth relationship and eventually living parallel lives. Each of them have their own lives and friends and activities and a little bit of connection. They share a place and few activities and financial issues and this and that, but primarily the marriage is a parallel marriage rather than an integrated and involved marriage. So that's the second phase of marriage. Now, if we allow ourselves to go through this volatile phase of differentiation, individuation, separation, without discontinuing the marriage, and be aware that we have to constantly focus on certain fundamentals that would safeguard the marriage, and we will talk about those fundamentals later. If we are aware, then we arrive on the third phase of marriage. And the third phase of marriage is the phase of what I call the enlightened union phase. The enlightened union phase is a phase in which the husband and wife mature individually through the challenges of marital life. They further mature, they further evolve, they further become wholesome. And in the process also develop a much greater appreciation in the other person. As we evolve individually, we become more self-confident. And as we become more self-confident, we are able to see the uniqueness of the other person. And by seeing the uniqueness of the other person, we fall in love with these unique qualities. And because we constantly discover new dimensions of uniqueness in the other person, we constantly fall in love with new dimensions of the other person. So it is a process of discovery of each other that goes on and on and on. And this mutual process of discovery of self and discovery of the other would bring very new dimensions to the marriage. And then what happens is that now you have a much more evolved persons, okay, that they have a life of their own and a very rich marriage life. Remember, in one of the writings that was read this morning, it says, and between them there is a barrier that they shall not overcome. What's the barrier? Well, that's a very important issue we have to keep in mind. You see, earlier this morning I was talking about the concept of unity. And one of the examples that I gave was the unity between ovum and sperm that created each of us, right? That unity the barrier between sperm and ovum disappears. And the two together become a fertilized egg. Okay? In human marriage, the husband and wife do not lose their individuality. They do not lose their uniqueness. They do not lose their responsibility for being who they are in life. Each person maintains his or her unique personality and unique being, but at the same time, they create something together, which is their marriage and their family. So this is crucial. In one of his writings, Abdul Baha says, he was asked the question, can husband and wife prevent each other from loving God and serving God? And Abdul Baha responded and said, they cannot unless they adore each other at the expense of everything else. If you put all your love and adoration in that person, you invariably are going to come out dissatisfied. Because it doesn't matter how much you adore and love the other person, you never can fulfill all their needs. Our fundamental needs would be fulfilled when we establish that relationship with God and we live that life of service to the cause of humanity that would give life, our lives, meaning, independent of other people. And when we live meaningful lives ourselves, and therefore we have relative comfort with our being as a human being, then when we get engaged in a marital relationship, we do not need to be constantly adored and served and everything by the other person, because they cannot give everything to us, and we invariably become disappointed, angry, resentful, hurtful, and so forth. So it is important to keep these issues in mind, that the enlightened union phase can take place only within a spiritual framework. A framework in which the husband and wife have developed the capacity for a universal love, which now, in the context of marriage, they devote it in a special manner, which I described as enlightened union. And it is a kind of love that inevitably has to create unity. It is so fundamental. If a love relationship doesn't create ever higher levels of unity, then it means that the spiritual dimension is missing. And we have to reevaluate it and reinvestigate to see what is it that is happening so that we bring it into the process, into the relationship, and into our lives as well. So these three stages are very definite in any given marriage. And the trick is not to be tripped in the second phase, not to lose our balance in the second phase, and be able to meet the challenges of the second phase, which is really a challenge of reevaluation and second look at the relationship and rediscovery of each other and rediscovery of ourselves. And when we do that, and we enter the third phase, it would be a very exciting illuminating phase.
My question is that the first phase, sometimes girls and boys, they see each other, their weakness, but I don't know where does that come from, I change it. Especially this notion comes that they said that behind every successful man is a wise woman, and it becomes so much unrealistic that sometimes the women, they think they can change everything with the wise, with the diplomat things, and what is the root of that?
Well, actually, the issue of behind every successful man is a wise woman is not the case. Behind every successful man is a surprised woman. Okay. Okay. So, that's surprised. How could this character be so successful? Because I know him. I know all of his weaknesses, you know. So behind every successful man is a surprised woman, okay? As I mentioned, in the first phase, we become blind to the realities of ourselves and the other. We lose our reasoning capacities. And we think, because we are in love, we think everything, we can do everything. That's the reason that many people marry, for example, alcoholics. And say, why you do that? He said, with the force of love, I can make this person to stop drinking. Or people go and marry prisoners, you know, murderers. Why you do that? He said, we are in love, and with love, we can change everybody. Because in the context of feeling, being in love, having fallen in love, in that context, we feel extremely powerful. And that's the reason that we need an objective observer in the form of our parents, observers, to say, yes, you are in love, but you're not powerful, nor you're realistic. Or yes, you are powerful, but you are not, you are realistic, we help you, and so forth. It is, you know, that dynamics involved.
Can you talk about the length of time for engagement in light of that?
Yes. The length of engagement in the Baha'i faith, 95 days, is very interesting. There have been quite a bit of research done recently about people who have cohabited with each other before marriage, or have had long periods of involvement with each other. And they have found that invariably, in these cases, the chances of dissolution of marriage is greater than those who haven't been with each other. The reason being, it seems to me, is that during that first, you know, when people finally find each other and they decide to get engaged, they are in the first phase of their relationship, okay? And that's the romantic phase. That's the phase that we are quite taken by each other. And because of that, if we allow it to go for a long period of time, a year, 2 years, 3 years, inevitably we begin to enter the second phase in our relationship. And therefore, relationship, when we get married at the beginning of second phase, relationship immediately enters in the conflicted phase. And that makes it much more difficult to maintain it. So it is a protection to have a short period of the first phase. If the couple have known each other, they have decided that they can fulfill the requirements of the sandwich that I mentioned earlier. If they can do that, and if they can now embark on a marriage and they have received the agreement of their parents, then it is extremely important for them to embark on a marriage, so they have a reasonable period of the romantic phase with each other, the joys of that phase, the excitement of that phase, which is essential because it brings them together further and so forth, before inevitably they are going to face other challenges. So the foundation is much stronger. All right, anybody else? You again.
I know. I'm reaching my quota.
Yeah. No, that's all right.
I don't know if you'll have an answer for this question.
I don't know either.
You spoke about these three phases, which is exciting and wonderful. And we know that in the Baha'i faith, the writings talk about the misconception of a soulmate. There isn't really one person out there for you that you have to search the world for to meet. On the other hand, there is, you can make it work with anyone as long as all of these factors are in place, hopefully. And also the fact that you brought up the term eternal bond that exists between...
I didn't, Abdul Baha did.
You brought it up from the writings, that's
yes,
what I meant.
okay.
Yes. And this is kind of an odd question, but when you've married someone, you formed that eternal bond that you're supposed to be with that person for the rest of the worlds of God. And if that person departs or dies suddenly, or you're left by yourself, when you go to remarry someone else, you reform that bond with another person.
That's right.
Is there anything in the writings that talks about how these two bonds coexist in the eternal worlds of God?
Well, I have a suspicion that in next word polygamy is allowed. I think that the dynamics of spiritual world is different from what we understand here. And we cannot, therefore, apply the dynamics of next world, which we do not know anything about it, to the requirements of this life, which we know somewhat more about. I think what Abdul Baha and Baha'u'llah have said about marriage in this life is that when we get married, we should look at it as an eternal bond. And we should do everything possible to make it an eternal bond. However, conditions would evolve that it wouldn't be possible. Two conditions that we can think immediately. One is somebody dies. And the other one is that the fundamental requirement of the marriage disappears. In the Baha'i faith, divorce is allowed. And the reason that divorce is allowed is because if the couple reach to the point finally that they realize that they cannot have a united relationship. In other words, they have aversion towards each other. This is the word that is used by the guardian, aversion toward each other. Aversion is exactly the opposite of unity. Aversion is exactly the opposite of unity. When that happens, then there is no choice, and Baha'u'llah has approved that people get divorced. So based on those two things, the things that are not within our power, and like death, and the things that make unity impossible, like I just mentioned, refer to it, it indicates that, yes, we have to do our best, absolutely, to create a marriage that is united, harmonious, lasting. And if we do our best, and in spite of all of that, something happens that marriage comes to an end, as far as I see it, we will be, again, subject to mercy of God and kindness of God, and we continue and we create a new marriage and so forth. What happens to the next in the next world? We don't know. But for this world, this is the dynamics that involves in this respect. The other issue that you brought up is the issue of soulmate. And you said it with such assurance that I questioned myself a couple of times. In the Baha'i faith, we don't have the concept of soulmate. I don't know where we got this, but I haven't seen anything in the writings of the faith that refers to that. If somebody has, I would be interested to see. But the choice of mates that we have is a combination of destiny, of chance, and choice. Because we cannot be everywhere in the world and meet everybody in the world, we meet our future spouses by chance. And we meet a number of people by chance, and from among them, we make a choice. So the process of finding a mate is a combination of, it seems to me, both destiny and human free choice. And it is a mysterious dynamics involved. If we had some time, it would be, I would talk about it, some examples, but it would take time, and we have many other issues to cover. What time is it? The one last question.
My question was, with respect to the 3 stages, is there any empirical evidence in terms of how long each stage lasts for?
Actually, the how long, no. There is no specific period that you can say average of so many years and so forth. There is a popular notion of 7-year itch and so forth. But I think, from what I have observed, is that the first period could last sometime as long as 5-6 years or so, could. The second period is a very sticky period, can last for a long, long time. I have seen people in second phase of marriage for decades, and they never get out of it. Because the second phase especially is dependent on our conscious choices that we make, conscious efforts that we make, deliberate planning that we make, and so forth. So you have to be, first of all, not surprised that the first phase ends, and not to be upset that it ends sooner or later. It doesn't matter. Second, you shouldn't be surprised that you enter the second phase. Inevitably, every marriage would enter the second phase. And second phase can be very difficult. And if you have patience, and if you have perseverance, and if you go systematically together to look at the phenomena and to see what is happening, and the very knowledge that you have this second phase would help you to safeguard your marriage and not allow it to be burdened badly and weakened and so forth. But to a very large degree is dependent on the kind of couple involved, and the type of personalities they have, and the circumstances they live, and the efforts they make. At any given time, in any given marriage, you can have the presence of all 3 phases. What determines whether a marriage is in first, second, or third phase is the level of expression of qualities of any given phase. For example, if the couple primarily are in a state of competition with each other, primarily in a state of conflict with one another, primarily are feeling that they are growing apart from each other, even when they have occasions that they are very harmonious and very good together and very loving and so forth, still we would say that they are still in the second phase. But they have potential to go to the third phase. So you will find that as you move from second phase to the third phase, you go back and forth. Sometimes you're in second phase, other times you enter third phase, you say, we have arrived, and then a while later you will see that you are back. Don't be surprised. This is the nature and dynamics of human development. These are not set just like that. They are very, very flexible from one phase to another to another. Okay, so keep that in mind with respect to this issue. And therefore, never get discouraged. Never get discouraged, because when you experience elements of the third phase, it tells you that your relationship has enormous potential to go to the third phase. And now what you have to do is to work on it and to develop and so forth.